We appreciate your support for our film project, and we really appreciate your donations. Tonight, we are going to show the trailer of our film. We also will show some scenes that never been presented before. But before that, let me introduce our film director, Andrew Hamilton. He will say a little bit about the film and the project and the work that we do. And another speaker for tonight is going to be Pavel Khodorkovsky. He's the founder of Institute of Modern Russia, and he will comment a little bit on the situation in Russia in terms of freedom of media and information. Thank you so much. Please welcome Andrew Hamilton.
Thank you, Helena, for a wonderful introduction. This entire event would not have happened without her, so please give Helena a round of applause. And just briefly recognize some of our fantastic team here, our producers, David, Natasha, Yuri, everyone who's helped us. Thank you so much. So give a round of applause. I'm going to be very brief so that we have more time to hang out, but I just want to say a couple things about free speech. So that's what we're here really to support today. And I'm going to share with you two facts that I learned about free expression, free speech in the last year or so as I've been working on this project. So as I mentioned, I'm Andrew Hamilton, I'm the director. Here's one thing about free speech I didn't know. It's actually a fairly recent thing. So, the United States has one of the strongest systems for protecting free speech, but there was an interesting story that I'll very briefly share. When World War I was happening, there was a U.S. presidential candidate called Eugene Debs, who got over 1 million votes. He ran for president 5 times. And even though this was more than a century after the Bill of Rights was adopted, guaranteeing free speech, he was actually sentenced to 10 years in prison simply for criticizing the war. So just think about that. Just for giving a speech in which he said that he essentially said that he opposed the American involvement in World War I, he went to prison and the Supreme Court upheld that sentence. And that was in the 19-teens. So, and after that, there was another couple decades of that kind of thinking that was carried through the American court system. So it's only in the last 50 years or so that free expression in the United States has been respected and upheld. So that's the one fact. And then the second fact that's kind of related to that is free speech is not obvious. It's actually a pretty counterintuitive idea if you think about it. That you should let someone say what they're going to say even if you find it deeply offensive to everything you stand for. And the reason I think it's counterintuitive is if it weren't counterintuitive, we wouldn't be here tonight. If it weren't counterintuitive, we wouldn't be making this film. And if it weren't counterintuitive, none of us would ever have heard of Pussy Riot. So I think it's important to realize that it's an evolution, it's a process, it's something that you have to stand up and show your support for. So in our own really small way, we hope our film will do that. It's called The Russian Dream. I think you've all come out to show your support, and we're very grateful for that. So we kind of went around Russia and the United States for a month. We filmed over 50 hours of interviews with everybody from current and former U.S. ambassadors to opposition leaders, Alexei Navalny, Ksenia Sobchak, Yulia Yashin, and then we met also with United Russia, the ruling party. We met with their representatives in the parliament. We met with bloggers, journalists, political scientists, and ordinary Russians, dozens and dozens of them, of all ages. And we've got some really great material. So again, I want to just thank you all for your great support as we move forward in the sort of time-consuming and expensive post-production process. We hope to have the film finished by November, and I want to just have our guest of honor is going to say a couple words, and then we're going to show you some very, very brief video clips. So without further ado, please welcome our next speaker. He's the president of the Institute of Modern Russia, my friend Pavel Khodorkovsky.
Good evening. First of all, I wanted to thank Andrew and his team for continuing to unwaveringly bring their vision of this wonderful movie to reality. when I first got introduced to this project, that I thought that it's going to be a fantastic opportunity to carry out the ideas of freedom of information and freedom of speech. And why do I say that? In Russia right now, we have finally surpassed that, invisible 50% threshold of internet penetration, and people are getting more and more access to information, to free, independent sources of information. While that information is sort of pull type of information. You need to know what you're looking for. You need to constantly be requesting info on what's going on in your country. It's also very much impersonal. Film, on the other hand, is a great medium to deliver in-person ideas, to deliver what the subjects of the Russian dream really think. And ultimately, it will help the Russian society make their decisions going forward. What's going on right now is we have beginnings of very important grassroots movement. There are going to be a number of local elections held over the course of the next 2.5 years, preceding the next parliamentary elections. And those local mayoral governor elections will determine the face of the Russian opposition heading into the parliamentary elections. And I hope that by watching this movie, people will get access to what their, hopefully, next generation of elected leaders really think. They will also get access to what the Russian officials and government officials currently in power think, what's their messaging. And I think that film is one of the best mediums of delivering that info. Also, on this side of the pond, this movie gives a wonderful opportunity for the U.S. society to get a glimpse of what the next crop of Russian leaders will look like, get acquainted with their ideas, and help exchange experience. It's not about funding the Russian opposition, which is the messaging that Putin's government so often tries to push through, saying that the opposition is not local, that it has been transplanted and paid for by the State Department. So it's not about that. It's not about funding the opposition, it's about exchanging experience. And I think that by introducing the people that Andrew has interviewed in his film, the U.S. society will have a much better understanding of who they need to talk to in the next 2.5 years to ensure that ultimately Russia is guided back to the principles of democracy. Also, on a very important note, I should say that since Andrew took care to interview the U.S. representatives like Professor Fry and Ambassador Michael Cole, Russians will have an opportunity to listen to what their unfiltered, non-propaganda modified messaging really is. And that will help counter the anti-American propaganda that's so commonplace, unfortunately, in Russia. So I'm very happy because having lived in this country for 9 years, I share the ideals of the American brand of democracy, and I do think that the exchange between the two countries needs to take place. So I'm very grateful that this movie will present an opportunity for the Russians to get to understand what the American brand of democracy and the ideas presented by its people really stand for. So thank you again, and I wish this movie the best of success.
Thank you very much, Ronald. I'm going to now just show you 3 very short videos. The first one is our trailer. You may have seen already. The second one is going to be in Russian, and I will then translate after the fact. It's just a short snippet from one of our interviews. And then the final video will be a brief excerpt from one of our English interviews. So we're going to roll that in just about 20